powerful song. Grandson Overdose, go check that goodness out. This is Meet Your Strawman, part 17. No fancy mask intro tonight, but we're going to talk about the number 17 quickly because it's my favourite number. 17 decodes to the word life. It represents these tattoos here, so Getteth and Netzach. Getteth 1, Netzach 7. My son's life path 1, my life path 7. Combine the two, it's 17. If you want to use vortex math, you get the 8. Tilt that on the side. Infinity! So, we're going to talk about Lincoln and his greenbacks. We're going to talk about the fat, ugly bankers and the corruption of World War One. And for people that don't know, Germany was the focus. Apparently, they were the culprit. It caused all sorts of ruckus and had to pay back a debt that they could never repay. But it's all a crock of shit because the Britain Rothschilds and the German Warburgs were in cahoots. And it was all an inside job just so they could implement a third bank in the United States. So, goaded by the private bankers, much of Europe supported the Confederacy against the Union, with the expectation that victory over Lincoln would mean the end of the greenback. France and Britain considered an outright attack on the United States to aid the Confederacy, but were held at bay by Russia, which had just ended the serfdom system and had a state central bank similar to the system the United States had been founded on. Left free of European intervention, the Union won the war, and Lincoln announced his intention to go on issuing greenbacks. Following Lincoln's not at all sus assassination, the greenbacks were pulled from circulation and the American people forced to go back to an economy based on banknotes borrowed at interest from the fat, ugly private bankers. That's not sus at all, is it? Finally, in 1913, the private central fat, ugly bankers of Europe, in particular the Rothschilds of Great Britain and the Warburgs of Germany, hint hint, met with their American financial collaborators on Jekyll Island, Georgia, to form a new banking cartel with the express purpose of forming the Third Bank of the United States, with the aim of placing complete control of the United States money supply, once again under the control of the fat, ugly private bankers. Owing to hostility over the previous banks, the name was changed to the Federal Reserve System in order to grant the new bank a quasi-governmental image, but in fact, it is a privately owned bank, no more federal than Federal Express. Indeed, in 2012, the Federal Reserve successfully rebuffed a Freedom of Information lawsuit by Bloomberg News on the grounds that as a private banking corporation, and not actually a part of the government, the Freedom of Information Act did not apply to the operations of the ever-so-corrupt Federal Reserve. The year 1913 proved to be a transformative year for the nation's economy, first with the passage of the 16th Income Tax Amendment and the false claim that it had been ratified. I think that if you were to go back and try find and review the ratification of the 16th Amendment, which was the internal revenue, the income tax, I think that if you went back and examined that carefully, you would find that a sufficient number of states never ratified that amendment. Later in 1913, apparently unwilling to risk another questionable amendment, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act over the Christmas holiday, while members of Congress who were opposed to the measure were at home with their children dressed up as Santa Claus, eating cookies and drinking milk. This was a very underhanded deal, as the Constitution, which explicitly grants Congress the authority to issue the public currency, does not authorize it to delegate that authority to another party, and so it should have required a new amendment to allow Congress to transfer that authority to a fat piece of shit private bank. But Congress passed it, and President Woodrow Wilson signed it, as he had promised the fat ugly bankers that he would, in exchange for generous campaign contributions, and Wilson later regretted that decision. "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by a system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of little dick dominant men." The very next year, World War I started. Didn't see that one coming, did ya? And it is important to remember that prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve, there was no such thing as a world war. No profits, no wars. The First World War started between Austria, Hungary, and Serbia, but quickly shifted to focus Germany, whose industrial capacity was seen as an economic threat to Great Britain, even though that is all bullshit. Remember the Warburgs and the Rothschilds coming together. So, who saw the decline of the British pound? As a result, there was too much emphasis on financial activity to the neglect of agriculture, industrial development, and infrastructure, not unlike the present-day United States. Although pre-war Germany had a private central bank, that bank was heavily restricted and inflation kept to reasonable levels. Under government control, investment was guaranteed to internal economic development, and Germany was seen as a major power. So, in the media of the day, Germany was portrayed as the prime instigator of World War I, and subsequently not just defeated, but had its industrial base flattened. Following the Treaty of Versailles, June 1919, Germany was ordered to pay the war costs of all of the participating nations, even though Germany had not actually started the war. This is bullshit, by the way. Now, this amounted to 3 times the value of all of Germany itself. Germany's private central bank, to which Germany had gone deeply into debt to pay the costs of the war, broke free of government control, and massive inflation followed, mostly triggered by currency speculators, permanently trapping the German people in an endless loop of debt. Bullshit. When the Weimar Republic economically collapsed, it opened the door for the National Socialists to take power. Their first financial move was to issue their own state currency, which was not borrowed from fat, ugly private central bankers. Freed from having to pay interest on the money in circulation, Germany blossomed and quickly began to rebuild its industry. The media called it the German miracle. Time magazine lionized Hitler for the amazing improvement in life for the German people and the explosion of German industry. They even named him Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. Wow. No comment. And there it is. Part 17 done and dusted. We're going to return tomorrow. Part 18. Continue the road to freedom. Hope you enjoyed that. A bit of gnosis for you. Much love, my royals. Take care.